The story begins with controversy. They proceeded to fire me over the phone, Austin recalled, his voice tinged with frustration. He's just racist. It's just the way it is. Wrestling, as he describes, demands a certain edge. To get over in wrestling, you have to be a bit of an asshole. He paused, reflecting. And he was such an intense individual. I was intimidated. This guy? A psychopath. Stone Cold Steve Austin, hailed by WWE as the most beloved superstar of all time, was known for his authentic, headstrong rebel persona. He was instrumental in saving WWE during the ratings war against WCW. Yet privately, Austin was far from heroic. Sometimes he admitted with a sigh, "You make decisions you regret. I'm not gonna lie, I was pissed off." Behind the scenes, a darker side of Austin lingered. WWE worked tirelessly to hide numerous scandals, often using hush money to sweep controversies under the rug. This documentary aims to shed light on that hidden reality. "I was aggressive," Austin confessed. "If I did something to upset him, the rage would come out, mixed with alcohol too." Steve Austin was born on December 18, 1964, in Austin, Texas. "That's where my parents still live," he noted. Growing up in Edna, a small town of just 5,000 people, marked by Republican influence and racial tensions, Austin was quite the athlete. "I played baseball, ran track, and played football," he reminisced. Even in his youth, he didn't mince words or respect authority figures. At 18, he started college with dreams of becoming a gym teacher. But as he put it, math kicked my ass, leading him to drop out. In 1989, he made his wrestling debut, earning a mere $20. "I slept in my car," he said with a wry smile. Slowly but surely, he climbed the ranks from regional promotions in Houston and Austin to the big leagues of WCW. Austin's time in WCW left a bitter taste. "They didn't see me as marketable," he stated flatly. He was fired over the phone, a moment he still recalls vividly. "After everything, being told you're not marketable really pissed me off," he admitted. Ironically, WCW failed to see the potential in the man who would become WWE's biggest star. "The politics in WCW kept me grounded," he said, his tone hardening. "But I was always on time for work. If I was hurt, I worked through it, and I was going to do things my way, or I'd run you over." Austin honed his skills in ECW under Paul Heyman. "Back then, there were no social media platforms to vent frustrations," Heyman recalled. "I gave Steve a platform." However, his early WWE persona, the Ringmaster, didn't sit well. "I'm not the Ringmaster," Austin told Vince McMahon. "I'm Stone Cold." From there, the Stone Cold persona emerged. "Neither of us knew exactly what Stone Cold was," he admitted. "We just tried things." Stone Cold Steve Austin became a cultural phenomenon. His iconic catchphrase, "Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass," resonated far beyond wrestling fans. Even people who didn't watch wrestling knew who Steve Austin was, a commentator remarked. Austin's character was bold, rebellious, and unapologetically ruthless. His legendary WrestleMania 13 match against Bret Hart solidified his place as a fan favorite. As his popularity soared, so did his ego. Behind the scenes, Austin's demeanor grew contentious. In 1999, he refused a feud with Jeff Jarrett, citing personal conflicts. Jarrett had previously criticized Austin's 316 promo, calling it offensive to religious audiences. Then he lost his temper and yelled at him. It's not the first time Steve Austin behaved less like a professional and more like himself. In wrestling, you don't just refuse defeat or reject booking plans, yet Austin did so repeatedly. For instance, when he was supposed to work with Mark Marrow, he refused. Marrow had previously lost Sable, and Austin wasn't keen on putting his title on the line against a wrestler who had lost to a woman. So, he didn't. In the late 90s, Vince supposedly planned to pit Austin against top star Hulk Hogan. Again, Austin objected, recalling a conflict with Hogan during his days in WCW. Apparently, Austin envied Hogan's standing, but that was years ago. Still, Stone Cold held on to his grudge. He doesn't forgive easily or forget, not even the mistakes of the late Owen Hart. His ex-wife, Jeannie Clark, said in an interview that Austin couldn't stand Owen Hart, even after his death. He, didn't like Owen Hart, and he wasn't really wanting to go to his funeral. He had a resentment. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we're live, SummerSlam, from the Continental Airlines Arena. Owen Hart broke Austin's neck with a botched piledriver at SummerSlam 1997. "I sent him into the ropes, and we do this crazy move. He ends up with me upside down, and he's going to hit me with a tombstone piledriver. Man, there's a big problem. My head was about that far below his ass. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we're live, SummerSlam, from the Continental Airlines Arena. Owen Hart broke Austin's neck with a botched piledriver at SummerSlam 1997. I sent him into the ropes, and we do this crazy move. He ends up with me upside down, and he's gonna hit me with a tombstone piledriver. Man, there's a big problem. My head was about that far below his ass. Well, that's not good for me if you're on the receiving end, because that's going to spike my head into the mat. Austin was hurt badly. Accidents happen regularly in wrestling, but such serious injuries are rare. Austin nearly died that night. I couldn't feel anything from my neck down. I was thinking I was never going to walk again. I remember going to the back, sitting down on a bench, and I was in a world of hurt. The ambulance people? Where are the ambulance people? Austin couldn't forgive Owen for this mistake. When you come that close to almost being paralyzed for the rest of your life, it really messes your head up. 2 years later, Owen suffered the same fate Austin narrowly missed after a severe fall in the ring. Many wondered why Austin didn't attend the funeral. His ex-wife Deborah later said he couldn't forgive. I think that did change the relationship that Steve had with Owen, and I think Steve was always a little bit pissed off at Owen. Steve had some anger, some bitterness. Steve Austin increasingly clashed with colleagues backstage, especially with the writers. He publicly criticized booking ideas, which attracted negative attention. Hogan and Austin didn't want to work together. Neither wanted to lose to the other. Austin later said he felt they couldn't have had a good match together. Vince and his creative team accepted Austin's decision and replaced him with The Rock, who went on to have a legendary WrestleMania match against Hogan. Austin, on the other hand, played a minor role at the biggest show, defeating Scott Hall during WrestleMania 18. I really thought I was starting to lose a little bit of my momentum. I didn't really like the creative direction we were going. The NWO had come in after WrestleMania. Austin had had enough. He didn't show up for Raw, saying he needed a break. But he made the biggest mistake of his professional career. I think at that time, a little bit of frustration was starting to set in, and the wheels were starting to fall off. Shortly after, the situation escalated. On June 10th, Jim Ross called Steve Austin and informed him that he was supposed to lose a King of the Ring match against Brock Lesnar on Raw without any build-up. While I was laying there, Jim Ross calls me up and gives me the creative for Monday Night Raw. He says Vince would like to see Brock Lesnar go over on me in a King of the Ring qualifier match. Austin was beside himself. He felt frustrated and disrespected. Really? You guys want to beat me? Man, I don't have a big head, but guys like me are pretty damn hard to find. He later claimed he didn't mind losing to Lesnar. However, an Austin loss was something that needed to be built up big. I told Jim, I said, well, if that's going to be creative, I won't be at Monday Night Raw. Bottom line is, creative needs to be a hell of a lot better than it is. That's stone cold, demanding, perhaps the most demanding of anyone I've ever worked with. But it was more than that. It was the pressure Steve put on himself. It was eating him up, or at least that's my point of view. Austin's motivation hit an all-time low. He grappled with one of the toughest decisions of his life. He didn't want to continue and considered leaving WWE. One night, he decided to quit. He took his ball and went home. Obviously, I'm pissed off. He was the lead performer advertised for that event in a major venue, and he didn't fulfill his obligations. I told him to get his ass off the airplane and come to work. It was never a one-man show. You don't do it by yourself. To say, right in the middle of that, I'm out of here, it's not the right thing, in my opinion. Austin turned his back on the company that made him a star, the one that was increasingly irritating him on many levels. He was burnt out, frustrated, and his body was a wreck. I was running hard, I was beat to shreds, I was drinking a lot, and just a lot of elements going on there. The train was about to go off track. WWE then made fun of Austin, provoking him. For example, they repeatedly said that Austin had picked up the ball and gone home, that he had let down the fans. But he didn't let that bother him. It was good for me not to step into the ring anymore, to do something else. Just go on vacation, go hunting. As it later turned out, Austin sometimes drove around aimlessly in his car. He even crashed a Porsche into a building, totally wrecking it. Austin's time outside WWE was a much-needed break, but also a time of drift without a purpose. What I did then, in my mind, was the only way I could get out, and get out with my sanity. It's a rough business, and sometimes it's a rough life, and sometimes you make decisions That was one of them, and I own up to it. A year after his WWE departure, Jim Ross sent a postcard to Austin, touching his stone-cold heart. He agreed to have a conversation with Vince McMahon to bury the hatchet. Well, Stone Cold Steve Austin is back. He brought a big fat can of whoop. But Steve Austin still wasn't everybody's darling. Behind the scenes, he had beef with Hardcore Holly. The two had long been friends and travel partners, but after Austin's breakthrough, Holly thought he got arrogant. He behaved like a diva and no longer cared about his old friends. Similar stories are reported by various former wrestlers. There have been numerous instances of questionable behavior, both in public and private, where Steve Austin was rude or disrespectful. Allegedly, Austin associated with the big stars backstage, but had little interest in less successful colleagues. He was a standoffish person. Stone Cold was in his own world, always with the top guys. She reveals another dark piece of information. Sir, Austin was a racist prick, so I ain't got too much to say to him. Anyway, his ex-wife Deborah talks about it in her book. Austin had peculiar friends that Deborah couldn't get along with. They were a group of white male Texans who repeatedly used racist slang words and talked about the superior white race. Austin is said to have known this group of friends since his youth. Am I let back through South Texas? You better. Am I going to change for no one? While Austin had dark-skinned friends like The Rock, black wrestlers allegedly had a harder time earning his respect. When a WWE employee brought her dark-skinned boyfriend into the backstage area, Austin lost his temper. When he found out that his ex-wife Deborah was befriending a dark-skinned couple, he was furious. He was pissed off at Deborah because she was hanging out with one of the Spurs players. And of course, the player was black. Sometimes his ex-girlfriend Tess watched BET, Black Entertainment Television. Austin didn't like that at all and subsequently referred to her as an N-lover. However, the most serious accusation comes from former WWE wrestler Ahmed Johnson. On the night of his Intercontinental title win, he found his rental car racially vandalized. Somebody wrote on my rental car, "Congratulations there," and a fan said they saw Stone Cold out there by my car. There is no clear evidence of who did it, but Johnson is relatively sure Austin was behind it. He's just a racist. That's just the way it is. And you know, it's sad because you get all these I see the little black kid with Austin 316 t-shirts on, and they're supporting him, not knowing who this punk really is.